Why is it not?
All right. Hi, family. My name is Thea. I am a recovered alcoholic. Thank you. Thank you, Phil, for the intro. I know Kevin can't be here. And I'm just thankful that he invited me. I've never been to this meeting before, and I'm nervous, which is good. I feel alive. It's funny. I used to pay to feel my heart, to feel my heart out of my chest, and would do the most wild things to feel what's pulsating in me. And it's just such a miracle to be here, be present, be sober, be recovered with all of you. Welcome to those counting days, to those struggling, to those returning. Welcome. Stick and stay. Truly, stick and stay. Sit all the way down. And if you have a problem, there is a solution. I have found one. I have a sponsor, and he knows he's my sponsor. And I'm on my fifth step again. I do, the steps repeatedly, work them. I remain in the disciplines of steps 10, 11, and 12, and working a fifth step right now with my sponsor. And he knows he's my sponsor. And I get to work with others, and that's a joy. It's a gift, it's part of the deal. There's no debate with that, in terms of working the steps and taking the action, all action, to have that daily reprieve. Sponsorship is a huge component that keeps me embedded in the work, and where I'm given this opportunity to bear witness to the transformation, and to be an instrument. Mark Houston talks about like a hollow bone, and the lineage too. Like Mark Houston carried the message to Tyler. Tyler sponsors Nathan. Nathan sponsors me, and I get to work with others. And we keep it real with the big book. We convert statements into questions. And what's been drilled to me, and what I've really come to accept, is, am I willing to follow precisely what is laid out in this book, to follow the program, right? Coming to meetings, that's not the program. We come to greet, to be reminded that there is a solution, to have hope, because there is hope. There is a way out. This disease is out for blood. This disease wants me dead, wants you dead, does not want you happy, does not want you alive. And yet, by this very moment, a miracle is taking place where we get to be here, alive, saying yes to life, and being willing to fight for our recovery, fight for our joy, and it's a miracle, truly. The day that I was separated from all mind-altering substances, alcohol in all of its forms, was July 28th, 2015. And so, by the grace of a loving God, the power of effective sponsorship, I get to be here with a little over 8 years of continuous sobriety, and still in it. There's no end. Like, oh, I did the steps, or like, yeah, I did them, and all right, now I just live and coast. Not at all. It makes it very clear. My purpose is to practice perfecting my spiritual life, enlarge my spiritual life. And as a real alcoholic and addict, I am to follow a program of action, right, that accompanies that. So all that I do to cultivate relationship with a higher power, the non-negotiable prayer with fervor, that took me years. I've wasted time thinking I was praying when I was demanding, or just, rattling off what, I could recite because I have, some brain cells left for memory. That's not prayer, like truly praying from my heart and having a conversation and affirming the truth of a source of infinite power and wisdom and love. Yeah, there is this place of stillness, like I do reach this state of ease and comfort with my higher power and the spiritual texts that I read and the meditation, for me to be sane. I go back and forth right now between SF and New York. I'm from SF, And I got reminded, because I'm a real alcoholic. Like, by default, where can I cut corners? Where can I slip and ease off? Like, oh, I was so good last week. I can have a break, right? I don't have to like meditate or, do a nightly review. I can skip tonight, right? Ooh, I felt that impact. And I got reminded, like, oh, I need to meditate at least 30 minutes a day. A good spot is like 40, you know? And that quiet time is so important, to follow my breath, to get quiet, to focus, on a point, if I can't, keep my eyes closed, so then just focus on a point in my room and just breathe and be and get quiet. Powerful, very powerful, and all that I do is along with, not instead of, right? Working the steps. And so, like I said, I'm born and raised in San Francisco, California. That's where I'm originally from. I'm zooming in from Brooklyn. I live in Brooklyn, New York. And, alcoholism, addiction runs on both sides of my family. I did not want this disease. I denied it for as long as I could. And it was apparent very early on. Whether one is born an alcoholic, becomes one. I mean, I didn't start drinking. Well, I had my first sip of alcohol when I was 6. And I really hit the ground running by the time I was 16. But in terms of that addictive trait, oh yeah. My mom would say when I was a kid, like, oh, you have such an addictive personality. And, she would know. I mean, my biological father is a crack addict. And my brother's biological father, the closest father figure, quote unquote, I could have in this world, was a heroin addict. And how do we die when we're, left untreated? Oh, we have some horrific deaths. And he was found dead earlier this year. And that was really painful. And he died of a fentanyl overdose. And so that, I saw very early on what this disease does to a person, what it does to a family, I've been on the receiving end of it, and so I did not want to admit for the longest time that I had this disease, right? And the type of childhood I had too justified a lot of my behaviors, gave me so much justification in using and blacking out and drinking and doing all sorts of things. Because I was like, if you had my childhood, like, you would understand, like I was the ultimate victim because I came from chaos, truly. It was a lot of destabilization, a lot of dysfunction, and a lot of old ideas were picked up. And hopefully I'll be able to get to that, because it talks about in the big book how imperative it is, vital, to be willing to just set it aside, set aside everything I think I know, right? Old ideas, prejudice, bias, not just to organize religion, right? Because they make a point with that in terms of spirituality, but it's to everything. Old ideas of what I think of the world, of myself, of people. Because very early on as a kid, I was in survival mode. The world is unsafe. I can't trust people. My body is not my own. Oh, I needed a drink to tolerate life. I was convinced I needed something outside of me to live and to be here. Because sober, like I never had a drinking problem, so to speak. I had a problem with sobriety, with being stone cold sober. Living in this world was excruciating. And the last thing I wanted, as far back as I could remember. So, growing up, the insecurity and the fear was huge. So best believe when I took that sip of alcohol for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I felt that I could be anything I wanted to be. I felt beautiful. I felt human. I felt free. I felt that and this was all delusion, right? This was what I was convinced of what I felt, right? Of what alcohol gave me. I thought this was the elixir, right? My medicine to be, right? Just be any, like be, be present, connect with people, connect with myself, tap into, my creativity, right? Release my inhibitions, be sexual, whatever. So that honeymoon was very short. Like there was no like, oh yeah, I can take it or leave it. It was like the moment I felt that, and it was early. Oh, dude, I went straight to the nth degree. Like I drink for oblivion. Like there was no, nursing a drink or stopping, or, thinking, yeah, I don't know, just that like, oh, I know my limit. Oh no, alcohol, it was obvious. Like blackout, I can't recall the amount of times, that I suffered or endured alcohol poisoning, and I'm the type of drunk too that gets like completely obliterated by the opening act. Like I went to this concert so excited, like my one chance to see this band live. They were headlining, blacked out by the opening act, came to, topless on an inflatable mattress in, I don't know, Skid Row, TL, for those in the Bay Area. I love the TL. It doesn't matter. Tenderloin, Skid Row area, shoddy place, with like, chunks of vomit in my hair. And I'm like, wow, what happened? My friend was like, oh, I heard you gargling. I just turned you on your side. And I was like, wow, like if he never did that, you would have a different speaker. Like that's so common and typical, like nearly choking on my vomit, you know, um, putting myself in these very dangerous positions and being scared, but like unwilling to accept that the way I drank is a problem, and there were times like that where I would not even bat an eyelash. I'm like, wow, that was a close call. Give me, fill in the blank. I did a lot of outside substances as well to also give me this delusion of control. I did a lot of other things that I could control or think I could control a situation, control and manage my drinking. Because yeah, if I can snort it, swallow it, smoke it, chew it, oh, I've done it. I haven't done needles, but I've had one relapse dream I did in that dream. And that dream was very vivid. And I woke up and I was like, okay, God, this is no joke. Like I must have been on thin ice with my program. And I felt the spirit was telling me, this is what awaits you if you don't level up. And that was a scary dream, very frightening. It wasn't like the, relapse dreams of like, oh, I just picked up a drink. This was like apocalypse in the bathroom. It was gnarly. But anyway, so going back, the consequences were starting to add up. But here's the thing, as a real alcoholic and addict, consequences don't keep me sober. It's not a sustainable higher power. Fear, like I'm not sober today off of fear. You know what I mean? I'm not sober today off of consequences. And in fact, the most insane thing I ever I've done, was return back to the drink stone cold sober. Wasn't what I've done inebriated or high, it was that despite all of that, I fell victim to the belief that I could drink again. Whew, And so being 5150, 5250, doing this dance shuffle with institutions and unwilling to really shape up, right? My best thinking did not get me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. My best thinking got me to the Golden Gate Bridge. It talks about in A Vision for You, where we get to that jumping off point, where we can't fathom life with or without alcohol. Some of us take it literally. The jumpers, and I was going to jump, I'm that dramatic alcoholic with a disposition so grave, dual diagnosed, the whole 9 yards, with the victim mentality, untreated trauma, right? It talks about in doctor's opinion, that alcoholic who goes to a deserted barn to die. And he had a searching party, and he was found, right? But I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me. I did have a searching party. I didn't know it until they found me. And they found me on the bridge. But yeah, I had a searching party. And I was like, wow, because the guy was like, you don't want to do this, Thea. And I was like, wow, you know my name, and that experience was February 25th, 2011. And on that bridge, this is before they did this whole work where anyone who attempts to jump now will be just caught by a net because that's how many people have died from the Golden Gate Bridge, jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge. I found this spot, and as I was walking, and I had to light part of my hair to smoke, to light a cigarette because it was so windy that day. This guy, he was just walking randomly, and he looks up, he smiles at me, and as he's walking, he says, "Don't jump," and keeps walking, and then that was a moment too of intervention and grace, because the moment he said it, it's like he unlocked the door in my head where all I could hear afterwards was, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't jump." And I was stalling. And by that point, that gave enough time for the searching party to find me. And then that was that, but that was that's my best thinking. Untreated, death, destruction, doing this work, saying yes to life. Yeah, I think it mentions too in the book, how it's a service for all, by a real alcoholic who's sober and recovered, not just sober, but recovered. Because yeah, I have done some insane things stone cold sober in AA that I'm going to get to, and so washed ashore to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, March 22nd, 2011. My sobriety date's July 28th, 2015. July 28th is the most important day of my life. I say these other dates, right, because this is what leads up to it. And that relapse is my story. It doesn't have to be part of yours, and if it is, you identify as a chronic relapser, stop. You have relapse, now move on. Remain on the path of recovery, right? That's it. And I don't claim any time prior. What I did, clearly did not work. How sustainable was it? The guy that spoke at the very first meeting I went to, March 22nd, 2011, it was Tuesday, beginners meeting in the Marina District in San Francisco. This guy, Des, was speaking. Des would be found in the bathroom with a needle in his arm in 2017. And I would be one of the last people to see him. And I miss him dearly. But when he spoke back in 2011, it was him where I was like, oh, maybe I could stay. Maybe this could be for me. He was around, we were around each other's age, right? He was my age, that's what I'm trying to say. He was funny. There was fluorescent lights, there was cookies and coffee, there was laughter. And I was like, oh my gosh, there was joy. And I felt hope, and he was just recalling some escapades and whatever. But I was like, wow, and shortly after that, started working with the sponsor, started working the steps. Years later, this guy, Andrew, my first year back, he'd be like, oh no, honey, you didn't work the steps. You negotiated your way through the steps. And I'm very thankful because you're looking at someone who had so much pride. I wanted to prove I would be different. So much pride, so self-centered, defiant, that thank God there's old timers that keep it 100 with me. Like they do not coddle me. I've used that up. I've used that up. Like I need like a harsh, blunt approach. You know, it's like, oh, what happened? Did you stop calling your sponsor? He was like, no, you negotiated your way to the 12 steps. And I was like, you're right, I did. You know? And it talks about the 5th step, like we only thought we were letting go, you know, of inventory. We only thought we were letting go of our egoism. We only thought, basically fill in the blank, right? Like, yeah. Because I did a 4th step, I did a 9th step, you know what I mean? I relapsed after the 9th step. I was sober for 19 months. From my sobriety day was March 24th, 2011 to October of 2012. And whether it's 19 days, 19 months, 19 years, it don't matter. It don't matter. It was obvious I had a problem. I had a gift of desperation, but I did not have a gift of defeat. And that is crucial for a real alcoholic. I didn't fully admit defeat. And I was unwilling to truly accept the layout of the program, or I was unwilling to accept all of what is entailed in the spiritual solution, right? I did fellowship. Everyone knew me. I was an AA cheerleader. I was into like Icky Paw, Y Paw. I had all these service commitments. Like I was a quote unquote AA all-star, you know. I was surrounded by people. I got really caught up with the fellowship and the scene and like, oh my gosh, and the cliques and like people and just, yeah, fellowship. AA was like a social club. And I did not like sponsoring. I really felt inadequate. Duh. You know what I mean? I was like dishonest, closed-minded, and unwilling in many ways, you know? And so sponsoring was really hard at that point after 19 months. And then here we go. Because it talks about in chapter 3 more about alcoholism. Now that's a chapter. I mean, the whole book, but especially with 1 with relapse in my story. I mean, and line by line, like carpet slipper dude, Jim and Fred, right? Because again, the time is arbitrary. I fell victim to the belief that I would be qualified to drink again because I had a length of time, because I learned more about this disease, you know, and that my self-knowledge was enough to fix it, like to fix me, that I could fix me, that I could manage and come back and redeem myself. I titled my relapse era Redemption. That's how delusional I was. I was going to like redeem myself, because by the time I washed ashore to the rooms of AA back in 2011, I was pale, gaunt, had half my head shaved, and just had nothing going for me. You know what I mean? Like went to the sink to like do laundry. You know what I mean? AA gave me a life where I became employable. I now had friends. I was back in school, you know, things were happening. Doesn't matter, right? All that comes and goes, right? But I was getting caught up on the material, very dangerous. And I know some stories, I haven't heard them. In earlier recovery, who doesn't love a rags to riches story? Like I love a rags to riches. Oh, right? Like from rags to riches. Yeah. That comes and go. That's material. What does it mean to live in the realm of spirit? Right? I follow a spiritual solution, right? Living in the spirit, that means there's principles involved. That means there's a power that's not me, that I'm relying upon, being dependent upon, that I'm chasing after love, non-transactional love, right? Peace, serenity, tranquility, tolerance, right? These are like, whoa, big words now. So let me scale it back, right? Because it's like, whoa, didn't like grasp that. for a while. And so not a shocker, that I also, what led to a relapse was I copped a resentment against AA. What happened to Jim? Unresolved resentment. I mean, he failed to enlarge his spiritual life. Why? Because he didn't, he did 1, 2, and 3, and then that was that. Then he felt confident enough to go to old stomping grounds, his story. And so, but he had unresolved resentment, copped a resentment, never worked through it. I mean, since then I have, clearly, right? But it was just lingering and festering, and resentments are lethal. Oh my gosh, resentments, number one offender. I have friends that are dead now because of resentments that were left unresolved and plagued by delusion, right? And so, and then Fred, not a cloud on the horizon, right? Things were good, maybe too good for me, right? Thought I can handle it, right? Oh, cocktails like ginger ale, woo, dangerous. So relapse, I was not cultivating a relationship with a higher power. And bottom line, and I closed off, because relapse starts in the mind, right? And ends with me picking up a drink. That goes for anyone. It starts in the mind and ends with picking up a drink, right? And so, and then what took place within those 3 years? How could I really sum that up? Because, yeah, delusional. I was going to work hard, play hard. I was going to manage and control this. And so it talks about in the paragraph and more about alcoholism, how we really go to the nth degree of control, right? The ism, where we'll switch brands, never drink alone, never drink in the home, drinking only at bars, this whole litany, right? Of various ways, right? That we will prove that we are not alcoholic. That's exactly what I did. All right. So instead of whiskey, I switched to wine. I was going to become a wino and be classy. Instead of powder, pills, you know what I mean? Yeah, amphetamine habit with wine, and switching. And also too, again, we treat alcoholism 3 ways, right? Like spiritual solution, defects of character, right? Or substances, right? And that untreated alcoholism was there, so self-centered. And, July 28th was not the worst. July 28th, 2015 was not the worst day. I had far worse days. I could not have foreseen that day as the beginning, or I should say the end, the end and beginning, right? And by that point, by playing chemists and by just feeling spiritually and emotionally vacant on a whole new level, a close family friend who's not in the program, but a spiritual teacher, guide, if you will, she knew about the Castro Country Club, and she took me. This is in San Francisco, because I didn't know where we were going. I thought I was going to have to be institutionalized. I was having these panic attacks. By this point, also too, you're looking at or you're hearing that this is being recorded. As an alcoholic, right? Life of the party, woo, there's that part, but really monstrous. You know what I mean? Talks about, it's said lightly in the book, where tornadoes, right? Or tornadoes, basically just destroying everything around us, and that this victim can really be a villain. And I was abused as a kid, and as an adult, I've abused others. And the thoughts too, there's a violent streak, miracle that I'm not incarcerated right now. Miracle that I haven't killed myself. I haven't killed anyone. That's too what is also set off. That's off. And, with drinking too, judgment out the window. Impulse is through the roof, beyond the sky. like I would do the wild, insane things, you know, and the clock was ticking, you know, and there was grace, there was this divine, unmerited, given assistance, you know, and this close family friend looked at me. She's like, let's go for a walk. I was like, sure, yeah, let's go. Cause this is not, I'm not right. I'm not right, you know, and she walked me to the Castro Country Club. That was July 28th, 2015. And in many ways, I owe my life to her, and been sober ever since, you know, and that was the day in that meeting with her sitting next to me that I waved that surrender flag, that internally, like spiritually, I just waved that flag of defeat. Like, I surrender, I lost. No one wins this battle. Like, no one has the power to win this by themselves. You will lose. I lost. And by grace, I get to be here. I'm thankful I get to be here. I have a purpose and get to help others. People I love teach me on the other side, from the other side, to keep going, because statistics, you know, some of the people I love did not make it. The guy who bought me my first relapse drink, whom I met in AA, he died Christmas Day, 2016. And miss him dearly. You know, some of us, you know, are given an opportunity to come back. Many are not, you know, and that woman who walked me back, basically without handcuffs, gently delivered me back to the hands of Alcoholics Anonymous. Right now, she's in a hospital battling cancer. Heartbreaking. I get to be present though for it. I get to love her, truly thank her, practice principles, do inventory on the nurses because they're not doing what I want them to do. But yeah, it's a trip, you know, and that she's in God's hands, not mine. Cancer though, vicious, like alcoholism, vicious. And it's been something this year. Yeah. You know, and it's grace, miracle, you know, that I had the financial means to make an emergency trip out there, you know, to go straight from airport to hospital and spend days with her. Like, this would not be given if I was out there loaded. Heck no. First of all, I probably would be dead or incarcerated, or be so broke that like I can just, you know, afford a pack of cigarettes, not even buy Lucy's, you know what I mean, and do whatever to my body to get whatever I needed to get done. You know what I mean? Like, it just would be horrible. And so to be given this life, you know, I get to experience and give back and return the love that is given, and not with a transaction, not at all, just reciprocity, just giving just because I get to, because I can. And that first year of sobriety in 2015, oh, I was pissed. This ego, admitting defeat, some do it gracefully. You know, I kind of threw a little tantrum. I claimed my seat, best believe it, but I was like, don't talk to me. No, I don't want your number. I got a sponsor. I left that meeting, July 28, 2015. Lewis Cullen was my sponsor. And because knew what to do, like, I was like, okay. And he just radiated this light. I was like, yeah, I'll ask him, you know, and I did. Yeah. You know, he extended his hand and I took it. So I had a sponsor, right? But in terms of like fellowship, I was like jaded, because also too, by that point, all the friends that I had previous round were either dead or relapse, you know? So I was like, ooh, let me just focus step work, recovery, you know? Yeah. have that be in the forefront, working the steps, not get caught up or swept away by socializing, yes, people, service, purpose, to connect with others. But that's not it. I don't get it twisted, and I love what Bill talks about, beneath is deadly earnestness, um, even with the levity. And yeah, I've been working the steps, year and a half in, my life kind of became a country song, where yeah, by 2 years, it's my aunt died, Steven died, my dog died. I was if I had a car, that car, it would have died. It was it was a country song. I can laugh about it a little bit, but that was also where rubber hit the road. I have experience in sobriety where it wasn't oh, give me the parade and let's call it a day and everything is just so, good. I mean, everything was good, right? But life occurred on life's terms. Life got lifey. And it was after Stephen's death where I spoke to this woman, Maria, old timer. I just remember crying, walking the streets, because that's all I could do, because I was so distraught. I thought I was going to have to be admitted. And she was like, good, you're broken open, start sponsoring. And I was like, okay. She's you have the time. And this was different. Even though I didn't complete the 12 steps yet at that point, it doesn't matter. Just with where I was, that's what she said. And I was like, and I kid you not, I would share honest, crying, just collapsing. And then people would be like, hey, I need a sponsor. I love that. It's they came. It was trippy. It was so trippy. It was beautiful. They're like, hey, will you sponsor me? And I'm like, really? Yeah. So much has changed and I've evolved, year and a half, 2-year sober Thea sponsoring versus 8-year Thea sponsoring. A lot definitely has evolved in terms of approach, the way, my lineage. But yeah, that's what she said. And that saved my life. Bill makes it very clear at the end of the day, you carry the message, and that strenuous work with another alcoholic will ensure you another day. Carried me, as I was picking up pieces and saying, WTF, God, oh, I was angry at God. But God is good, and I think maybe I'll segue my relationship to God, because around 5 years, I was suicidal. Worked as far as I could with what I was given, but there was more. And, something occurred at 5 years too. There was this shift that took place. I moved across country. The sponsor I was having, that I was working with for 4 years, who I love, I still love, whom I love very dearly. And she drilled in my head, grow or die. Grow or die. That was my go-to acronym for God. Get the desperation. Yes. Am I desperately seeking the work, pick up the tools, do this work? Am I willing to grow? It's either I'm growing or I'm dying. There's no in between. And I was like, yes, I can gravitate towards that. I understand. It's either yes or no, extreme, grow or die. And recently working with others, it was gift of defeat, but yeah, 5 years, man. I was like, there's something more. I'm missing something, come find out I was missing a lot, in terms of truly combing through this big book, converting statements into questions, right? And having a very in-depth approach to what is said, right? What did the founders precisely do? Am I willing to follow precisely what they've done? That's simple, and it would take a year and a half before I would have my current sponsor. But I was searching, when I started going to Bronx Big Book Study 2020 with the pandemic. And Alice, who spoke before, I guess last week, she played a pivotal role in who I'm, in the sponsor I have today, and that's what we get to do here too, in terms of helping each other and holding each other accountable, but also too, it's like looking out for each other, ensuring like how, like, yo, grow, grow, and I've had to learn over the years too that this is not a checklist. His death, I think, really taught me that, because we would always go to 11-step meeting, like a prayer in San Francisco, and we would always read Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience. And what do they say as the essentials of recovery? It doesn't say that you need to do 90-90. It doesn't say that you need to have 10 sponsees, or one's, 4 commitments or 7, or be, fill in the blank. It's willingness, honesty, open-mindedness, right? Like, am I willing to be willing? Am I willing to be honest? Am I willing to be open to recover, right? To work this program. And that I'm not here to collect, or take. I'm here to give, but in order to transmit something to give, right, there's work for me to do, right, to get to that point, right? And so that, around 2017, willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness was in the forefront. Like, those are the master keys to the kingdom, right? Willingness, honesty, right? No one can see that, right? And the how prayer is so important. God, please help me to be honest with myself and you. Help me to be open and willing to do your will, right? Give me the strength to carry out your will over mine, right? Because the default will be dishonest, right? Be caught up in some lie that I'm convinced is true, or like some old idea that the world isn't safe. Oh, that's nothing. Yeah, old ideas, letting that go. How have I been able? Because I have not, right? It's through the inventory process, right, that I get to see on paper, right, and admit to myself, to God, and to another human being, my sponsor, all of who I am not. I get to reveal what's been blocking me. What are the old ideas? What are the quote unquote laws that I've been carrying around with how I think situations, people, circumstances are supposed to be, right? Self-searching, leveling of our pride, right? What is it? Confession of shortcomings, restitution. It gives that little like description of what we do, right? In terms of the work. Self-searching, what does that mean? Cross-examination of thoughts, opinions, judgments, right? Am I willing to have that be checked, right? And I love with where I get to be is that I'm just open, like I'm humbled. I'm willing to be humbled on a daily basis that I don't know, and be willing to let go of whatever I think I know, and to accept that my thinking is finite. And each hour, each moment given, right, is an opportunity for me to deepen my relationship to the infinite source of power, wisdom, love, right? And to rely upon a capital P power. It's so important, vital. It's what sustains me, is a capital P power, greater than me, and to reconcile too with my God. Because, I was raped as a child, abused, oh, dude, me and God, woo. And I was raised with religion, had faith, lost it. And it talks about in the 12 and 12, how that's sometimes the worst kind, or maybe not worst kind, but it's like harder, because it's like, oh, you had it and you lost it, versus someone who never had it to begin with. And people like Jay, like old timers, my friend Sherilyn, It's fun. I just want people to live forever. I think it's hard. I think it's like, yeah, I don't need to get into that. I'm closing, but people I deeply love and admire that are older and wise have really been gentle and have encouraged me to seek other texts, movies, spiritual, that are spiritual based, that get into like the truth that God has always been with me through it all and was there. And can't get into it longer, and I'd be happy to talk to anyone. But yeah, there's been those times of like spiritual crisis. Like I think, but like, yeah, where I feel like I'm like walking through hell because I'm like, God, where are you? Really, I've disowned God. Really, I've been so angry. Now we're good. Like now we're hella good. We're so good. And we both, and because there's this intimacy, there's this love, hard to describe it in prayer and meditation, right? Of this intimacy that comes from this relationship. And knowing that people before me have transcended like the unspeakable and the principles, love, truly, like love, like embodied love, right? And I have a sponsor that reminds me too, in his own way. I'm not going to quote him, but from what I gather, to sum up what we do, it's like, God by knowing the principles. I meet God when I meet the principles. And that took me years to accept, years. Because it says very early on, elimination of the drinking is just the beginning. What's more important is the demonstration of principles. More important than sobriety is demonstration of principles. And all that I do, wherever I go, right, they give the list, right? Occupation, affairs, right? That love and tolerance is our code. I was like, oh, is that an option? Code, And so the principles, that's been what's been a huge eye opener, or like another tier level of recovery, of practicing principles and being consistent with that. And with knowing love, yeah, I get to know my God on a deeper level, and it's never ending. It's endless how deep this goes, I'm waiting for a cue. I'm looking at the time. You said 55 minutes. I'm not doing the math, but I know it's 8:57 p.m. my time. And Phil, can you tell me exactly what time I am to
Yeah,
stop?
you're pretty close to time.
That was a cue. Okay, great. Thank you, Phil. And so meditating and prayer, right? And doing the 10 steps. I was really confused for years on what a 10 step is. It's like there's a nightly review. That's part of my 11th step. The 10th step is that all throughout my day, I am to stop, pause, turn, and pray. I love a good rhyme, love a good jingle. And I kind of joke about it of like, oh my gosh, it's like as if I was being spoken to as if I were a dog or a preschooler. I don't know. But that's what like was a way for me to like comprehend step 10. Stop, pause, turn, and pray. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. To consult with God throughout the day, to stop and bring God. And Lewis, he would say, where's God in this? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. It was just, yeah. In my first year, he would say, where's God? And I was like, I don't know, but now it's like, oh, prayer, right? There's the thank you that help me and guide me. Right. And so, this journey continues. And with that, comes a life I could not even fathom, a life that has surpassed my dreams, and that on a daily basis, the impossible becomes possible. And so thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Thea. That was a lovely share. And I could definitely relate that. Stop, turn, pause, and pray. My little thing is turn in order to go out. Yeah, that's what I do.